Um, Welcome everyone. Again, I'm seeing more people come in, but I'll just get started with introducing myself very quickly. My name is Claudia Siegenthaler, and I'm a project manager here at Intento as a part of our customer implementation team. And I've been here about a year and a half, and I am currently based in San Francisco, California. And this is the second webinar I'm moderating, so it's kind of fun. I'm not as nervous as I was the first time. I have a better grasp. I'm excited to be here and moderate this conversation. I think it's going to be very insightful. So I'll just go over some housekeeping. So this webinar is being recorded, and all registrants will receive an email with the recording in the next few days. At the bottom of the screen, you will see a Q&A button. So please submit any questions that you have in this section at any time. We will not, wait till the end to answer. Throughout the webinar, I will occasionally step in to make sure questions are answered if there's any clarifying questions. So please, at any time, write any question that you have. And I think with that, we can kick it off. So, Konstantin, I'll start with you. If you could go ahead and introduce yourself.
Uh, Thank you. My name is Konstantin Savenkov. I'm CEO and co-founder at Intento. I have a PhD. I've seen many failed AI implementations. We've seen with my co-founder that rarely AI is the reason for them. It's typically other things like integration and other boring stuff. So we set off in like 2017 to fix it. We picked enterprise localization as what we decided one of the most troubled industries from this perspective, with very complex price, speed, quality choices, and many buyers making them wrong. And I'm still relatively new, but like 7 years in the industry. It feels like moving target all the time. And I think main insights we got is that for enterprises, quality is about specific requirements, not about just fluency, and that localization is about translating experience, not just content. And that's what we're implementing with our platform, just solving bottlenecks for our customers around integration, evaluation, customization of their solutions. And, with LLMs, it feels that finally we're at the last stretch. And what it takes now, actually, it's a bit bravery. And I'm really glad that we have Ben who had this bravery. Yeah, I'm based in Berkeley on the West Coast, not too far from Claudia.
Awesome. Thanks, Konstantin. Ben, pass it to you.
Thanks. Hello, everyone. I'm Ben Warren. I'm the manager of the Language and Translation Office at Amadeus. For those who don't know Amadeus, we're one of the global companies that operate in the IT solutions for the travel industry. So if you've ever booked an airplane ticket or boarded a plane, gone through an airport, booked a hotel, hire a car, anything like that, there's an excellent chance that Amadeus was behind the scenes working on all those interactions. I've been in the localization industry. I surprised myself by realizing it's almost 20 years coming up, and always in language. Before that, I was a journalist and an editor. So language has always been what pays the bills. And as Konstantin said, enterprise localization definitely has its challenges. Now, we've been working with both Intento and memoQ for, I think, the last 5 years now. And we are constantly evolving what we do, thanks to the support of both of them.
Awesome. Thank you, Ben. And where are you located or based out of?
I am in Sophia Antipolis in the south of France, although Amadeus has offices everywhere in the world.
Excellent. Oh, yeah, I want to be in the south of France. That sounds wonderful. And then last but not least, Balázs, I'll pass it to you for an introduction.
Thank you, Claudia. My name is Balázs Kis. I'm one of the founders of memoQ, and currently I work as a chief evangelist, which pretty much means that whenever things need to be talked about on behalf of memoQ, my colleagues put me on the spot. So that's something. I started off as an engineer, but I was always interested in language technologies, natural language processing. If we count that, I've been in the industry for pretty much for 30 years now. Today, fair warning, my role will be minor because of all the amazing things that Ben is about to talk about, memoQ as a translation management system provides the plumbing, some of the basic machinery that runs the process, but it isn't necessarily the content. It's just a good place to have and manipulate the content in and drive it through the very innovative process that Ben is about to introduce. So I'm looking forward to this. Thank you.
I think it's like a meeting place for humans and machines, right?
It is.
Balázs,
It's very much the agora for machine and people, machine and humans.
You do yourself down there, Balázs, because for us, we see very much both memoQ and Intento as the partners we need. For what we achieve, both of them are invaluable.
Thank you.
Perfect. I think with that, Ben, I can pass it back to you to get us started.
Okay.
Kick it off.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's difficult to know exactly where to start, but I think giving a little bit of context of our thinking, and also to realize that when I'm describing anything we do, we're talking from an enterprise localization point of view. There may be lots of people who are working for LSPs or have other roles within the localization world that may have slightly different ways of looking at it, but I'm really looking at it as a company that has translation, localization needs, and how we went about achieving what we did. And our starting point, as silly as it sounds, was to start with a language strategy. It was to know which languages we needed to focus on, because it's very easy to listen to the languages that make the most noise, but you're not necessarily getting the same value from those languages. So we needed to look at where our customer bases are, how many languages are going to reach the most number of customers. And that allows us to know how much effort we need to put into those languages as well. What it also does, of course, is help with resourcing. It helps with planning. It helps with prioritization. So I think it's an excellent starting point for any company that's looking to move into automating some of the tasks. From there, the next step is to understand the bigger picture. What is your company trying to achieve? Because the localization world tends to be a small part of a bigger plan within a company, certainly one the size of Amadeus. And for us, what we saw was the move to a chatbot-based world means we need to collect information. We have a lot of incredibly talented experts in their field and across lots of different domains for all the different solutions that we have within Amadeus. We need to collect all of that information and make sure that it's well formatted, it's well written, it's well edited, so that any chatbot that is going to access it and use it, and for any questions that our customers are going to have, it's going to basically provide a good answer. Now, this has to be done almost all the time. It's not just a case of taking our existing content. We are evolving our solutions, our products every day. So this is a never-ending task. There is no end goal in sight in terms of being able to finalize it. It's going to go on forever. So with that idea in mind, what we did in our team was to then identify our pain points and our bottlenecks. And the biggest, I say biggest, but one of the pain points we have is that we have, as a global company, Most of the content or information that arrives at us comes from a non-native English speaker. And that's where we have to step in. And I'm incredibly lucky that I have a very talented editor who is capable of taking the text that she's given and making it beautiful, conforming to all of our styles, all of our rules, making sure it makes sense, and then providing it out. But that then creates another problem, which is a bottleneck. I only have one editor. And if I want to scale up all of this information gathering, guarantee that there is some quality involved, I need help. And that is a long way of saying this is where LLMs came in for us. We wanted to concentrate on making sure that the LLMs worked on fixing or helping us with these particular issues rather than just having a scattergun approach. Because my feeling is if you're just using an LLM and thinking, oh, it can do everything, it's a magic tool, that's not going to work for you. You have to pin down exactly what you want to get out of it and then work from that as a starting point. So that's really the history of where we started from. What did we do next? Well, I think we started to change the way we think about language a little bit as well. In the past, we always separated English is one area over here and translations were another area over there. And while within our team, we saw the obvious link between them, it was always a separated step. One of the things we've tried to reinforce is that all language is vital, and we need to create an unbroken link from the English through to the translation. So we started with looking at the English content and working with what we now call SQI, or source quality improvement. And we realized that we need to think about every language as doing something unique. Now, we may have the common issues across all languages, but really the way we've started to think about it is to analyze it language by language and to really drill down from there. So we took all of our old projects, our editor went through everything. We created reports of what our most common changes were. So we analyzed everything that we've been working on for the past few years. We looked at what the starting point was, what the end perfect goal was, and tried to think what work went into that. What were we changing all the time to get to that point? And I should say that that was the same process for English as it was for other languages, but the information that we pulled out was different language by language. What we then did, we then categorized all of those changes into different areas. Were they tone of voice? Were they basic language issues, grammar or punctuation? Were they house style issues? You know, were they Amadeus specific issues? Those kind of things. Konstantin. Can't hear you, I'm afraid.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I want to quickly ask, so, you know, there are very elaborated error typologies like MQM, DQF, and others. And we see that, just anecdotally, we see that very few enterprises use them to think about their requirements and their quality. And my hunch, maybe the reason is that it's more like linguist-centered things rather than end-user-centered things. So what's your take here? Was it the first time you started to systematize translation errors? Did you use your own typology or adopted something?
I think it's fair. I think how we've done it now is the way that, you know, what we used to call the language lead probably looks at it when they're doing an LQA and giving everything a score in different categories. But we've always tried to categorize the issues that we see both in English to some extent, but certainly in translations. To be honest, they were very simple categorizations. It was more along the lines of, is this a do not translate term? Is it a product name that should remain in English, a place name, something like that? Is it terminology? Are we giving a UI term that's translated in one of our products a certain way, but we're not using the correct term? And then a magic third category that can only be described as everything else. And that, to be honest, served us well for machine translation projects, because they were the things we knew that made the most difference in our output. When we moved into this for SQI and automatic post-editing with the languages APE, we had to concentrate a little bit more on that magic everything else category. And that's why we broke it down a little bit more. So what did we do next? We took all of that information, we gave it to Intento, and they started doing their work essentially, and then starts a cycle of testing. So what we would do is essentially run projects through and have cycles of seeing how well the changes are starting to be made. And this is where the categorization was important, because what we could then focus on was to look at those changes that did two things. One, that impacted the majority of the text in a file. So by that, I mean, if we looked at a file, consider it as a 100% entity, what changes were going to reach 70% automatically? Was it possible to do that? And what was being changed? Those were the categories that if we focused on those, we could see that we can fix a magic 70% of the text automatically, leaving much less text for our editors or reviewers to focus on. And that's what really makes the difference, because for us, our editor in particular, but also our reviewers, shouldn't be focusing on things that are just recurring issues that we see over and over again. That is what we felt the LLM is ideally suited to work on. They shouldn't be fixing grammatical errors, punctuation errors, style errors from our style guide or our house style or tone of voice or things like this. What they can now focus on is the far more skilled areas of work that, I suppose we should call the difficult bits. And now it's much easier for them to narrow that difficult bit down and work on those.
Yeah, I was going to say, Ben described it as a very kind of easygoing process, but I would commend Amadeus and actually Ben for being one of these first brave customers who gave us green light to apply generative AI in this way. And well, they're first to write the benefits, but also, of course, some of the things we had to research and develop and invent as we went through this project, including also that LLMs were rapidly developing as we were working. But some things, we tried them yesterday, didn't work. We decided, okay, let's go the other way. But then something got updated and now it works. So I have a question which may be interesting for some people in the audience. So why do you think you were that brave? Was it that in your case it was clearly the best or the only option, and other companies maybe more like fall back on human linguists in those cases? Why you decided to go this way? I'm sure you discussed it probably with your colleagues and stakeholders inside the company.
Well, firstly, I'm not quite sure you could describe us as brave. That's very kind, but for those with a political background, doing anything that's brave is also really worrying. It sets off alarm bells. But okay, we'll take that. I think the starting point is, don't forget, we're a software company. We're always at the cutting edge of what we do within our field. And while we as a language and translation office, you know, might not be developing the products and working as closely as our developers and everything to you know, do the magic that they invariably do. We still have the same ethos. We still want to show that what we're doing is at the cutting edge of whatever the next technology is. I think that's an important part of it. If I'm being completely truthful, it's also we feel we should always be ahead of perhaps the general conversation, because, you know, and maybe we'll touch on it a bit later, there's always a fear that this technology is going to come in and become a button press and everyone's jobs disappear and departments like ours aren't needed because, you know, well, the large language model can do that. We know there's a little bit more to it than that, but in order to make sure that we can tell that story properly, we need to be able to tell that story within our own company to show the success that can be done, to show the skills that are needed behind the scenes.
Yeah, you know, it's like in a little bit of like kayaking, and there's a rule: you need to, even if the river is fast, you need to move faster. You need to control your own destiny.
And I think that's particularly true in a company our size, where everybody is going to be looking for the solution to their problems. We want to be in a position where we can help as many different teams within Amadeus as possible. And that means finding a way of scaling up what we do, but also finding a reliable way of offering a language service. Not just offering a language service. For us, there's a real difference between between those two. So what happened next? Well, we basically started seeing the benefits, I suppose, of putting both SQI and APE into production. What it means now is our editor and our reviewers can now focus on more skilled tasks. And for us, what that means is really working on the Amadeus-centric concepts and ideas that drive what we do. They don't need to fix language things. That's what the LLM really should be doing, and it does, you know, with all the programming, with all the help that we've had, with all the ideas we put into it, it does do those things. Now the teams can focus on the bits that make the difference. And for us, that is explaining the ideas of how Amadeus products work, how our solutions interact with other solutions, how you can use them to get to whatever the end goal is for the end user. That's really, I think, one of the main things that we wanted to show with both SQI and APE.
And if I may ask, so you know, I think it's interesting to unpack what you described the letters, because I think this translation and content industries have this feature, which is this very big gap between where value is created by translators and, well, AI systems as well, and where value is captured by the end users, where they solve their problems. So how does it look for you? Who is the customer and end user for you? How you create this feedback loop from these end users to your editors, well, to your team?
I think we have to think that we have two customers. Initially, our customer are the learning teams or knowledge developers or video developers who are creating the content or the information to begin with. Our first goal is to make it as quick and easy for them to be able to produce content. Again, they shouldn't be worrying about language. They've got their own skills, their own issues that they are going to have to solve on a daily basis. We want to make it seamless, that once that text exists, we can tidy it up in English, we can translate it, we can get it back to them in a format that is perfect for whatever tool they're going to use next, for however they're going to deliver that content. But really, if you like, our main customer are the Amadeus customers. Now, my team, the language translation office, we're very much working with the learning departments and with the support departments. So if you like, our first level customer are the ones who are coming to training and to learn how to use our solutions, to see how to do their daily job. And it's stressful. They need to know an awful lot of how our technology works so they can go back and start making money for their company. So it has to be the information we provide in training has to be perfect. It has to be exactly what they need to meet their job. And that's one of the reasons we want to take the language issue away a little bit, so that people can then focus on the pedagogical approach. They can see, is the content we're creating actually good learning material? Does the flow work properly? Does the workflow, if you've got to do 7 steps to achieve something, is it the right order? Does it make sense? These are the kind of things that our teams can focus on, which I think gives a better experience to our customers as a result, because we're providing them with better quality information to begin with.
Thank you. And I want to encourage audience. So we know lots of details about this story, obviously, for the 5 years we spent together. If you feel that you're missing some piece to understand what of this is applicable to your situation, just feel free to go ask questions and we'll try to address them as we go. Yeah.
I think another point I would like to say, another benefit we get from these workflows is we can now take a step back and try and analyze how we can help people who are writing this information to become better writers. So it's allowed us to start developing this writing center idea, which is something very dear to our editor's heart as well, because she is really aware that instead of just fixing problems afterwards, if we can start to spend the time analyzing what those problems were from the people, being able to show them the difference it makes by fixing them, and then spending some time with them, showing them this information, showing them how to fix it, or in SQI's case, having a tool that will do it for them, then it just improves the quality from the starting point even more. And, sorry, go on.
Yes, so you're actually showing writers what changes were made to the source?
Yes, so that's what we'd like to do. So as well as trying to show writers how to be a good writer, by having all this information, what we can then try and do in the future is to sit down with the people who are creating the most content. We'll start with the teams close to us and then hopefully work out from there. But we can tailor it to what they need to become a better writer. And if we're being honest, that just helps us.
Yeah, I would say that's very open-minded, because anecdotally we see a lot of situation when customers tell us, okay, you can automatically translate this content, but don't touch the source. And like, well, it's essentially the same, right? Because it's hard to touch the source, harder than machine translation touch. Like, no, don't touch the source. Okay, if we just, if you don't see it, is it okay? You just, we just do it somewhere, and you just say, that's okay. So it's interesting.
We've spent a long time telling people that translation works if we have good English, because most of our content, almost all of our content, starts as English as a source language. So for us, it's just a vital step, to make everything else work. I suppose what we can talk about next is the automation side of things. For us, SQI in particular it's only possible because we've started to explain to people that English, as crazy as it might sound, is a language, should be considered as a language, and therefore we should treat it as we do every other language. And by doing that, we made a decision to move editing into memoQ, which then became our linguistic hub. And moving editing to memoQ it seemed obvious to us, but probably isn't an obvious step for everybody, I think.
Yes, that's where my question is actually here. That I actually saw a couple of names on the list of attendees who would be very eager to hear about how this is plugged into memoQ, how you set up this. So just a few words about this, because this is not your average translation workflow, whatever that means, and that I think it would be great for this audience to hear more about this. If you can just in a few words elaborate how you actually made the translation management system do all of this for you.
Sure. Well, we started by thinking what were all the good things that we use memoQ for when it comes to translation, and why are we not doing that with English? Why are we treating it just so completely differently? We know that by gathering all of the linguistic data that we have after translation and review in our translation memories and using turn bases, we can make a difference. So we just thought, if we do the same with editing, let's move it into memoQ and we can start gathering this information in the same way. We cheat a little bit. We say that we're moving from British English to American English. And because we can template an awful lot, memoQ allows us to basically automate an awful lot of the steps straight away, which is another important thing. Without that sort of portal approach, without that sort of idea of being able to just put a file into memoQ and then watch things happen, we wouldn't have been able to achieve things so quickly. So we pretend we're changing from British English to American English. memoQ then connects to Intento, launches SQI. In the background, we can use any translation memories from previous edits. We can highlight all of the terminology we might want to think about. Our editor can also focus a little bit more on just areas that need work rather than looking at everything again. And what we've tried to encourage as well is consistency. And by moving it into memoQ, it's easier for people to understand the idea of a 100% match in a translation memory for English. There's no need to write the same thing 100 different ways. If one way is a very good way of writing it, we can reuse that way. And it's a lot easier to get that idea across by showing them how a translation memory works and how we can reuse the English from previous projects. I think what all that then allows us to do is two things. It gives us the opportunity to scale up. Without these kind of tools in place, we'd still have the human resource bottleneck and the engineering bottleneck, which meant that it doesn't matter how good we make these things linguistically, if we can't put them into production, it's not going to have any real benefits. That's what's made the difference for us. memoQ helps us put it into production effectively. And using these tools, I mean, for SQI as well, but also for automatic post-editing, it frees up our reviewers, not just to look at other things, but it just gives them more time back, because perhaps one clarification I should have made, we don't have full-time linguistic reviewers. We have volunteers, or people who have been volunteered. And they have full-time jobs. They are trainers, they are help desk agents, they are developers, depending on what we're looking at. We have to rely on their goodwill and whether they have time to be able to help us with the language reviews. What we've put in place means we don't require as much of their time to achieve more. And for a company our size, with so much work in the background that we want to work on, that's a little bit of the holy grail.
Yeah, I would also add that we see it across also a few other companies where basically they ask subject matter experts who are not linguists paid per word by any means to help with tasks like that. And that's a real testament to user experience, because linguists who worked with linguistic tools for like many years and decades, they kind of develop certain tolerance to friction in how they do their job. And when you come to subject matter experts, to customer support people, to other professionals, to make it work, you need to really nail their experience. They should feel that whatever they do, that helps the purpose, that helps the company. It's not just some.
No, exactly. And honestly, it's one of the reasons we use memoQ is it's so easy for our reviewers who are, as you say, not professional linguists, as in it's not their professional day job to use. You know, we don't have to teach them years of localization experience. We can just say, please click this link, look at that. You're all good. And, you know, that works for us really well with the resources we have. And it works for us because I have a really good team of specialist linguists, localization experts. You know, even though there's only a few of us, we know how to make sure that memoQ is set up in a way that is very easy for our end user, but we can control an awful lot of the information, the interactions, the workflows, the terminology in the background. That's really how we've made it work, I think.
Mm-hmm. Also thinking, sorry, quick question. Then just what I think is, I think this kind of use case is maybe interesting even for companies who do not translate that much, right? Because it's essentially using AI to improve copy even for their main market. Because, you know, there is, we have this like rule of thumb. If you know, if translators are not happy with the content which they translate, it's likely that users in their home market may also be not quite happy with this content. Just
I think that's fair, but I would also add something that also drives the way we think about things a little bit, which is the feedback that we get. We have to think of it in two ways. Okay, you can have linguistic feedback. You know, we all want things to be 100% perfect because, you know, otherwise, how would we sleep at night? But that's not necessarily what is always needed. When we get feedback from our customers, like our actual end customers outside of Amadeus, they're not saying, you know, your conjugation there was a little bit off, or, you know, actually, I think that's feminine and you made it masculine. I just don't understand a word that's going on here. The feedback, we've never, and I mean really never had that kind of feedback about language quality. The only time we will ever get language feedback is around terminology. And it's always more or less the same message, which is you used a UI term that is different to the one that we use, or you've used a way of describing a concept that is different to the industry way that we talk about it in our country. And what we realized is that's our market. That's who we're trying to impress. We're not trying to impress the people who want 100% quality linguistically all of the time. We're trying to impress the end user who just wants to read it in a hurry, because chances are if they're reading support material or attending a training, it's because they need to know something and fix something rather urgently. They need to understand the words in front of them in the context in which they work in their language or market. And that's what we focused on. And again, that ties it back to what the LLM is doing. The LLM can do the language part for us, the basic language areas of grammar, of punctuation, of tone of voice, of conjugating, of whether a language declines or not, or things like this. Where we're bringing the human skill, where we're bringing the real difference, is by focusing on exactly what our end customer expects to see. Whether that's the terminology or the time we can spend to create that content in a better way.
Yeah, so that's I think kind of contributes to this debate in the industry. Do we define quality as linguistic quality, or we talk about purpose of the translations. And in this case, what you describe sounds like this perfect Babelfish scenario where basically all linguistic issues are taken care by AI, and subject matter experts may focus on their area of expertise. And it a little bit reminds me this story about when, one of the big moments in communication was when we invented telephone, right? And but there were noise, there are things which prevent people enjoying it, because people used to talk just face to face, right? And engineers were focused on eliminating this noise, and it didn't really work well. There was one guy, Claude Shannon was his name, who was the first to focus not on the noise on the line, but on what's the purpose, what we really want to achieve. Our goal is not to really, achieve perfect sound. The goal is to transmit the information, but what is information? And then it all kind of led eventually to information theory, computers, and all this nice stuff we have. But it all started with just moving the focus from the noise to the signal, to the purpose of the whole thing. And that's something like that. Sometimes I have a feeling that we're so much focused on linguistic errors when we talk about translation quality, about delivering message in a different language, that we actually we maybe better define quality some other way. But I think that's open discussion.
Yeah, I actually
Yes.
want to, if I can jump in here very quickly with a couple questions. Also, time check, we have about 17 minutes left, but very quickly, Ben, I want to go back to you since we have a question on what you were talking about with in-house reviewers. So a question was if you've trained your in-house reviewers on what is needed from them, and do they consult each other for consistency, or do you just perform the full IHR in-house review or just a sample?
Do they consult? We try to put the teams together. We've tried to create different reviewers. Again, because there's not one person doing a review for any one language, they tend to have reviewers for different domains. And I won't try and explain how Amadeus is organized, but that's essentially how our reviewers are also organized, because it makes the most organizational sense. It's our role to deal with the consistency in LTO in our team. That's the skills that we bring. We want to extract that information from the reviewer, and then we're the ones that collate it together and make sure all the different reviewers are talking, if you like, the same language and using the same thing. Another thing to bear in mind, though, is sometimes the same language is incorrect. We have solutions, products, different ways of working that, while the English could be the same, will have completely different translations, different tones of voice, different ways of being. So we also have to guard against just blanket using the same language across, or the same changes across every different solution. We have to be a little bit more tailored.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
And it looks like there's one other question too. And again, this is kind of the theme of this webinar, but specifically for Konstantin, I think people were interested in how Intento contributed to the direct implementation of SQI and APE for Amadeus, and just looking into more probably specifics there.
It's a big topic, but I think the essence is that we kind of played a role of the innovation partner here. So we listen very closely to, and working very closely with Ben and Amadeus team to understand what they want to achieve and what are the gaps. The general approach is that we used to use machine translation so that everyone in the industry had such a long relationship with machine translation that we do not really notice its, drawbacks and deficiencies. And but we know that there are gaps. And there are specifically gaps around that imperfect source. There are just some requirements you cannot learn from data because they do not appear data often, they're context dependent. And we were working with Amadeus to, as Ben described, to identify why people added content, why we're getting this feedback, how to attribute it to specific things, which you cannot do with machine translation, but you can address outside of it using LLMs. And we just iterative process, as I mentioned, it was not super fast because back then we didn't have anything standard. If we do it today, it was just we have standard AI agents to address some of these things. Back then we were just exploring and iterating. I don't know how did it look from your end, then?
I think that's true. I think we all had an idea of what we thought LLMs can achieve. But I'm not sure we really knew how to make them do it. And that's where the team in Intento really helped, because as Konstantin said, they listened to what our demands were and worked back from that. That's why I think I probably say this a lot within the company. If you just use AI or an LLM because it's kind of cool and new, or somebody says, well, it's 2025, we all use AI now, it's probably not going to work. But if you know what your gaps are, if you know what problems you're trying to solve, an LLM's really good. It's going to do a lot of those things. So long as you always remember it, it's not going to do everything. And that's, again, that's something I'd really like to focus on, is it allows us to think of language as a skilled task again. It might be changing where people in the localization industry or even in my team or our department focus their efforts. But what hasn't changed is we're always showing that there are skills needed to make this work. This isn't just a push button automated process. If you think that way, it will not work. Yeah. If you have the right people in the right places in the background with the right skill set, you can achieve a lot, and you can achieve a lot with a very small team. And really scale up the offering of what you can do. That's really what our personal end goal is like, is to, if we can almost create those jobs within Amadeus, that would be great. If we can create that story that we can say, look what we can do, and there's only 4 of us in my team. Now imagine if we had a few more people, look at all the work out there across the rest of the company. With just a small handful of skilled people, we could achieve so much more. And so instead of having this fear that, AI will come for our jobs, we want to say the other way, because we have these tools that are just tools, we can create new skilled jobs within our company. That's the hope anyway.
And I would also comment here. So it's very good notice. So we used to think about tools as something, some, I don't know, bugs, which we kind of work around, because that's how software tools developed. You develop same kind of logic for every customer, so you have to adjust your business process around that. AI is new kind of tools. And sometimes people say this, it's not AI which will replace your job, but another person with AI replace the job. And I think, okay, I'll be this person with AI. I'll just have this checkbox, use AI. So it doesn't really work like that, because there are different kinds of AI. There are different kinds of ways of using it. There are different skills you can automate, and maybe it's not today's skill you need to automate. So it requires this iterative process. Platforms may be the same, LLMs may be the same, but what you will come up will be very specific to your business and very specific to the job. And one of the things which I also wanted to mention here, just to make sure we have time to talk about that a little bit, is that a good example here is that we actually adjusted the process of working with automation here, because the old process was kind of data driven. With MT, we just take all the data, we throw it all into this black box, we hope for the best, but we have some score, we know, okay, it's improved. We don't really know what's still missing. And the only thing how we could think about efficiency here in terms of the score. And I think when you mentioned that for some languages there's big evidence in scores, but in some languages there are no big difference in scores, but actually big difference in what requirements we're able to meet, and it was important for
yeah. You know, we're often told, and we follow the data because that builds the arguments for how it is. And when we launched APE in Spanish, we started looking at the edit distance, and the edit distance dropped considerably. And we all thought, well, that's it, we've cracked it. You know, early day, everyone can go home. Well done. And then we did the same in French, and it just didn't change. Now, you know, you have greater minds than me to be able to explain why that was the case. And so we thought, well, we've done something wrong. What's the problem here? But when we then spoke with our reviewer and then actually looked at what was going on, the reviewer was saying the exact opposite. They were saying, I made much fewer changes than before. I just changed things slightly differently, and it took me less than half the time. So from their perspective, this was brilliant. You know, it gave them a lot of confidence. It showed them how good it could be. It sort of, you know, it also helped that we hadn't just been talking nonsense to them for the last 6 months, and it did actually work. So that was quite pleasing. But it was a little bit of a worry that we can't just take one data point and say, that's how we prove it works. We have to look at different ways of measuring that, whether it's the time spent, even whether it's just feedback from the person doing the work. How do they feel? Do they feel happier doing it? Did they feel like they achieved more? That's a win as well. And as it turned out, in all the languages we put into production, the time spent has between 60 to 70% been cut, which is fantastic.
Yeah, I think it goes to the same kind of also debate that, you know, edit distance not really, and editing words is not really very well correlated with the effort, and especially with perceived effort, right? How we feel when we do that, how much time we spend, especially when the quality of automatic translation is pretty good and we need to close this last gap. Because editors edit because some of the requirements, not because you know, they feel the score is off. They edit because something is not met, some specific things. It may take a single or a couple of words to change, but it may take lots of time to understand, to rationalize even this feeling. And as soon as we can nail down these requirements, we see things like that. That's what I'm talking about. We're kind of switching from more like data-driven automatic translation, more like requirements-driven, because that's what matters to people, to end users.
And it feels like we've given them the tools and the time to be able to do that now, which we couldn't in the past. I think that's a real plus. So I don't know how long we have left, but I think if I was trying to sum everything up, for us, these tools work, but they work because I have an incredibly dedicated, skilled team who understood what could be achieved, what couldn't be achieved, and focused on making sure what could be achieved had the biggest impact. They worked within all of the business constraints and larger ideas within the organization to make sure what we did was tailored to help everybody else, not just because we thought it'd be cool to do it. And we have, with Intento and with memoQ, the right relationships and the right tools to allow us to put this into production, to scale up what we can offer, and to keep improving. I remember at memoQ Fest last year, one of your keynote speeches, Balázs, was talking about, you know, with the vectorization, about how we can start linking words together behind in an LLM. And that struck us as something that was quite key for the future role of what we might want to achieve. What our job is now might not look the same in 5 years' time, but the skills that we're building now, the skills that we're developing and understanding, and honestly, we have now, will be invaluable as this technology progresses. because we can't ignore it. We just have to master it.
Yeah. And maybe to address, also to kind of wrap up on my side and address a couple of questions I see about what exactly was in those workflows and what exactly we did with those LLMs.
Yeah. Thank you, Konstantin.
Yes. So in the core of it is that we have a platform which enables chaining, building quite complex multi-agent workflows. And why multi-agent? Because you can actually build the thing in one prompt, maybe. The problem is you won't be able to do any kind of change management and change anything because you'll be fixing one thing, another thing breaks. So it takes a good deal of expertise to understand how to split it into different agents, like agent which does sort of quality improvement, agent which does this automatic post-editing, that automatic post-editing. And while building those agents, we use different tools. I mean, we use everything which is available, which is obviously prompts and retrieval augmented generation and fine-tuning. And there's a question, is fine-tuning like too expensive? Yes, but sometimes it's needed. For example, if you cannot really if your viewers cannot really give you every detail about why they're doing changes, there is a slightly different data type. It's not TM, it's something else, more related to like log of reviewer actions, which we're lucky to work with memoQ here, who enables a very convenient way to access this data. And we actually, I believe we did a bit of fine tuning to capture these edits from this data. So it was a combination. And when we built a solution, we explore a few different options how to build those workflows. And it's always kind of a bit of trade-off between cost, speed, and quality. And another thing which I think we were lucky with memoQ is that we were able to integrate this quite complex workflow with translation management system, because in some cases we cannot, because just the API we have with TMS does not allow this more long and complex things to do. So thank you, Balázs.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for saying something that I wouldn't be comfortable to say, because this is not a promotional webinar, but yeah, this was the point to put the machine and the human together in a way that these kind of connections become really hassle free, and I think the three of us together achieved that on this one.
Definitely.
Yeah, that was a great wrap up. I think we're almost exactly on time. I know you did a nice wrap up of how everything worked and how we were able to achieve so much for Amadeus. I don't know if there's one last point anyone wants to make here for the audience, a key takeaway.
You can make it work for you, I think, if you have the right people, both in your team, and you find the right partners to work with. There's nothing to be scared of with LLMs, so long as you have a very clear vision of what you are trying to achieve.
What I would like to add here is, it was really interesting to listen to Konstantin talking about shifting from the data-driven approach to the requirements-driven approach, and this is what memoQ had in mind pretty much right from the start, that the requirements are human requirements, originate in a human organization. And so you need to be able to implement the checkpoints, even whatever automated processes you use, so that these requirements can be enforced. And there should be points where you can measure these efforts. And what I'd like to point out is, when you talk about the way LLMs are used, it became clear for the audience that you can't just throw a single LLM with a single prompt on a problem. There is still engineering work to do. There's still humans who determine what is good language and what is good communication. And there's a complex process that needs to be engineered, that needs linguistic work. And if anything, these human skills just became much more valuable than before.
Yeah, yeah,
Thank you.
and they also have more leverage, and that's, I think, very important, because to become an expert, you need to spend at least 10,000 hours, and then actually more to continue being an expert. And when the only leverage you have is like a few thousand words you can do in a day, and that this way you can leverage your experience to have so much more impact on organization and end users and the whole thing. So it should be really rewarding. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Perfect. Well, yes, thank you everyone for coming. Again, like I said earlier, all registrants will receive an email with the recording in the next few days, so keep your eyes out for that. And I just want to thank all our panelists here for the discussion and hope that everyone walked away a little more curious and learned a little something. So thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
Claudia.
Yeah,
Thanks, Claudia.
Bye-bye.
thank you.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
very much. Bye-bye.